for all magicians, bards, visionaries, and poets, and also farmers, and craftsmen, and warriors, and travelers, and sportsmen, and also women and girls of this kind who love to work and live and move in a beautiful countryside, and who are appalled and shocked and frustrated in a certain deep sense when there is a war going on, as it is now in the Ukraine and certainly in many other parts of the world. There explosions occur, violent, destructive processes are going on, and the growing substance of Mother Earth, organized into bodies of individual organisms, is destroyed, be it human or plant or animal or even elementary. So because bombs exploding in the fertile soil of Mother Earth are also wounds in the body of the mother, okay? And if you feel like I do, that when you hear those messages from wars, and if you sometimes see the pictures of wounded soldiers and dead soldiers and destroyed trees and burning landscape, if this shocks you so deeply, because you feel the destructive force cutting through the organic matter, which has taken 4 billion years to evolve on the planet Earth. You feel it by sympathy so strongly that you simply are appalled, shocked, and horrified, frustrated, and you become melancholic, even depressed, because you feel ashamed of being a part of a race of the so-called intelligent Homo sapiens sapiens who has managed to destroy the very basis of his life, and then you start to a search for a kind of harmony, of a kind of inner way of changing this, because you have persuaded yourself after following the political speeches and the economic programs and all kinds of various parties, that they never change it, that it's only talking and talking and talking. And many of them even profit from it, and many of them even organize this or the plan and prepare the wars, okay, to make profit, no? Then you become really ashamed and of being a part of this human race. And especially if you then realize that it is the young, the strong souls and young and strong bodies that are sent to wars, to be destroyed, to be wounded, to be shocked, to be mutilated. So many young boys, if you look into the history of the human race and its warlike history, somebody has counted that it may be something like 5 billion violent deaths have occurred in the history of mankind, especially from the time when it became let us say, civilized. This is civilized. So, and then you become to wonder, and you search and search for a kind of remedy. And if you persuaded yourself that cognitive thinking, that making proclamations and laws and proposals and discussing them in a democratic way in societies has been done so many times, and big laws were written and big constitutions were written, and great heuristic processes have been held after the past wars, where everything that was done was condemned. People were executed again as for their war crimes, and it starts again and again and again. Then you think, okay, something is basically wrong. Then you start to look into metaphysics. Okay, if it cannot be done on a physical plane, and if it cannot be done on the moral plane, and a practical, pragmatic, political, and economic way, and if you realize that maybe even this pragmatic, political, and economical structure is the cause of the wars, because it is the means by which the weapons are produced, weapons are transported, sold, and profits are made. And even literally the banking system, the money. And if you look at all this, then you realize it is something in common. It is based on cognitive, conceptual processes that lose the touch with the perception and emotion of the soul and the body, with the emotions of the soul and with the perceptions of the body. And you see all those generals, all the bankers and politicians and manufacturers, they are standing in front of some computers or boards, and they are pointing out to set a symbol, saying how we shall do this, how we shall do that, we shall improve production, and they are drawing some lines and counting and percentages of some units and input, output. Very similar way the generals stand in the bunkers in the command post and have again some computer screens or boards or models of the war field in front of them and say, in this way we shall achieve success, we shall increase the speed of our units, and that's why we have to do this and that. And they move again some symbolic units that represent weapons and even human beings, and so terrible, no? And the bankers naturally have the easiest way because they have only one unit to move. The very absolutely abstract unit of the currency in which they are counting their profits, not? And they are going to pay everybody so that after all the profit will come, not? So, and there have been many thinkers that realize this. Something is very wrong in this conceptual representation of reality, of the corporal and emotional reality of the world experience. And if we lose the touch with reality, then it's very easy to destroy all life on Earth. All the scientists that are sitting again in front of some computer screens or boards, and they are moving abstract symbols of atoms and electrons and of some elements of iron and of uranium, and are thinking like, how shall we do it that more energy is released and these two compartments crash into each other, and so that's again counting with moving in abstract worlds of concepts. After all, naturally, they invent some economic, political, or physical processes by which they force these ideas onto reality, and they are destructive. And all what has been created by Mother Earth, by the biological processes by millions and billions of years, is destroyed so easily, because I am always shocked. If you see a tree, if you love a tree somewhere nearby of your place you live, and you say, okay, let's visit this tree for 1 year every day. Okay, you may do it one day in your life, so because you want to understand this tree. So you start walking there every day, and you spend some half an hour in front of this tree. And my specialty that is I exercise qigong, Chinese gymnastics, and try to feel the shape of the roots and of the stem and of the trees and of the trees, of the branches, and in the winter that's all, and then suddenly in the spring there comes the buds, and then we should do it every day. Then you realize how beautiful this process is of opening, what has been stored for the whole winter and autumn, then starts to open, and then you see how wonderful the fresh little leaves open, and it starts to make a sound when the wind comes, and so and so. So you see how long it takes, and then you imagine, boom, there comes some bomb and some grenade, some explosion, and patch. In the moment the tree is gone, or even workers can come with a chainsaw and they cut it in 5 minutes. Terrible, And the chainsaw machine is invented in a certain sense also by mathematical and theoretical thinking in concepts, because it was necessary to compute the physical forces that will move the gases that shall explode in some chambers, and the expansion of gases and the transformation of this power on the chain, and burning the fuel and building it. It's all was done by computation of physical laws. This brings you to this phenomenological idea of the great thinker Ludwig Klages, who has the idea that all that has been created by using abstract concepts is an enemy of life. Because the essence of conceptual thinking is its lack of spatial and temporal dimension, acts of consciousness, and which are like moments, like lightnings, perceptual, objective perception. If you are like a romantic poet and you're walking through woods and you feel the colors and the smells, and you are maybe in love or you are dreaming about your girlfriend, and you just simply let your eyes glide on the trees and on the shapes of the trees. You come to a little brook and there are flowers on the side, and you hear the rustling of the water, and your eyes are moving like, slowly following the changing shapes and motions of the trees, of the grasses, of the flowers. Suddenly there flies a bird through the woods, and you feel the deep space between the mighty trees, and you actually feel the wings of this bird when it is a greater bird. Like it must be wonderful to glide between these columns under the green shade and with golden light on your wings, and then imagine that it would be a war, starting a war, and there crashes a bomb, and all this is annihilating, and you fall unconscious, and you wake up after 1 hour or so, and you are happy to escape because everything is ashes and burning. So the destructive processes on this planet are somehow much faster than the growing processes. And conceptual thinking has affinity to this destruction by the sheer fact that it is by itself without space and time. It is immediate. Thinking in concept is immediate. An act of consciousness is always a lightning. And it is also reductive. We know from the Phenomenology of Husserl that it is always intentional. The human consciousness is intentional. It is somehow, something wonderful. We have intentions. We do not let our soul simply to float in the space of the Earth hemisphere, biosphere. We can select. We have intentions. The human consciousness always has to grasp. You have it in this word grasping, which means at the same time controlling one object, and then another, and then another, then another. The same applies for reading. This conceptual grasping. There is perceptual grasping, like seeing one object after the another. There is also conceptual grasping, like understanding one after the another. If you read, the text goes from left to right, and on and on. If you think you can just open a page and understand it, no, then you are mistaken. There are some crazy people who think they can just leaf through a book and just, read the headlines. And they say, I have read the book. Now, oh, shit is it? They have simply remembered some few concepts, abstract concept, and because it is their profession, then they already know what they know. They only strengthen their own concepts. So writing and reading, going from one side of the paper to the other, and one sign after the another sign, one word. And so it's intentional, it's separation. Whereas the life of the animals and plants and rivers and lakes and seas and winds is continuous, fluid, not separated. Growing processes are always continuous in time. And that's why I think the cognitive thinking and conceptual thinking is somehow connected with the destructive force that disrupts the slow growing processes of life. Even this way of talking about it, is my new way of thinking. I have been studying philosophy for like 40 years. But I have been also writing poetry. I was drawing pictures, no? And I exercise this qigong sport and other sports like skiing, which is really fluent. No? It's fantastic to stand on a hill and see an untouched deep snow area and flat and hilly and bumpy or whatever is below you, and some woods between that, and then you make a line, a kind of arabesque line going down. It's fantastic. So all what is real, what is living, what is organic, motion and growing is continuous. And so I was led by searching more and more for this continuous motion. When it came to the realm of the soul, it is also continuous if you live in a kind of... And then there was the discovery of some other quality of this life-supporting processes. They are passive. If you think about the poet who is walking through the woods, and dreaming about his beloved, he does not have a goal. He doesn't look even at the road signs, because I personally find the road signs disturbing. They take away my fluid, dreamlike perception of the rocks, of the trees, and of the mountain brooks if I'm in the mountains, yes. Yes, if it becomes an evening and it's becoming cold and I must get back to some cottage or something like that. So definitely I look at the sign, and I'm grateful that somebody put the sign there to get the right way to the cottage. Yeah? But as I start during the day, and especially if I go on a road which I already know, I never look, and I even intentionally look to the other side when I'm walking past the sign which has so many kilometers or hours to this and that place, because this conceptual, the name of the place and the number of the distance or time is already disturbing my soul so massively that I lose my poetical mood. Okay, so it led me to another realization that all what is life supporting is passive, and what is in a certain way life destroying is active. It must be done. Okay, it must be done, and especially if you are in a war situation, acts of war are very short, and that's why there are commands. That's why in a war situation nobody is waiting for inspiration. What shall we do? Well, maybe when the wind comes, I feel like, stretching. Maybe we shall throw some hand grenades when the light is correct. So I would like to see the setting sun as it glistens on the hand grenade as I throw it. And then I please bring some musical instrument, and when it explodes, we shall accompany it by some violent melody, and I hope that the evening wind will run through my hair in the moment of explosion, and that will be a perfect dramatic moment. The generals would send you to a psychiatric clinic if you would officer, if you would describe the way of your operations going to be, nah? And it would be very, you would be very lucky to escape, and many soldiers who didn't know how to escape, they simply did something like that. They became poetic, they became passive, they became, in other words, crazy for those pragmatic minds who think in a war situation everything must be fast, on command, and the meaning of all actions must be single meaning. In communication, above all, there must be a reduction of all poetic moments. If you would pick up your telephone in some war and you would hear like the evening shadows are lengthening and the ducks are coming out, and I feel also that the ants are preparing to lie down, and the beds are flowing like arabesque, like and then you would know, you would immediately know this guy is crazy now. Okay, so we have passivity and contiguity in English is the word now. So continuous flowing growth of processes and changes in the elementary world, and passivity. Two characteristics of life. And then we have discontinuity, command, absence actually of time and space, conceptual thinking as an prerequisite of a war situation or of some grasping, controlling, pragmatic situation. And this led me then to a search, after I have written a lot of poems, while listening to music, no? And I was trying to convey the feeling and the image I have had in my soul to somebody who was important to me. That's why poets write poems to their muses, to their beloved, now, because they really are motivated now. They are moved by the muse, and they really want to open their heart. And what is in the heart, in the soul? It is images and emotions. And when there is emotion, then it is a kind of continuous passive motion. So a poem is very different, essentially different from a war situation command, forward, man, and then the commander gets out a cognitive map on which a point is marked, and the map is divided into sectors, and there are axis measurement, exact measurements, and there he pinpoints at one point on the map, and there is where these guys should run the shortest way possible. Whereas the poet, he is opened his soul, he lets the image of the beloved appear. He does not decide what will happen, because this does not bring him creative lust. No? He wants to be surprised. I mean, he doesn't want anything. He feels that she's approaching as a muse. And if he lets her to appear in the way she wants to appear, if he lets the images flow as they want to flow, then he is happy, then he is fulfilled, because he is granted a wonderful living experience of the vicinity of his beloved, even though she's far away. And to command in this way something like she should look like this, or she should come here and sit on my alongside my bed or whatever, where he's dreaming on, this would destroy the image. This would make it artificial. It would make it theatrical. It would make it that what we know, what we call as a performance. No? It wouldn't be not a spontaneous appearance. So this led me to this new way of bardic thinking, I call it. Now, the old bards knew it. No? Old bards like Homer and many druids, no? And the many singers no? In the medieval ages, and they knew it, that you have to wait for the image to appear, and then you describe the image, and its dynamic, continuous changes. And if the image is halted, no, and nothing appears, or she is motionless, the image or the muse, then you simply continue to touch the strings and feel the surroundings, like if you're sitting on a porch in a park or something. So this itself is, for the bard, is fulfilling. No? It is continuous, it is passive, it is full of forms and motions, no? Of nature, shapes. And then actually we come to the last component of this. My new approach of thinking is, and creative imagining, is the idea that the soul functions as a morphogenetic field. The soul is definitely not a cognitive operation. It has space, it has shape, it expands and contracts. Especially if there would there is a blast behind my window now, that an automobile crash or a grenade would fall down, like in a war situation. Soul would immediately contract, and she would become shattered, no? And concepts would take over. The ego, another important concept of my model of creative thinking, is that the ego is dissolved, because the ego is the lighthouse, that it stands in the center of the morphogenetic field of the soul, as if, no? And is sending this penetrating, sharp column or beam of light and hitting with it the individual parts of the surroundings, be it in an actual physical world, like a torch light, yeah? Or be it in the conceptual world, where concepts with sharp borderlines appear if you use this intentional ray of conceptual consciousness, and its source is the ego. And this definitely is not what is suitable for a poetic mood. The ego must be dissolved. If you want to allow the world, which is outside you, and mainly the emotional part of the world, and now we can say it in our terms, if you want to allow the morphogenetic fields, the souls of all other organisms, and even elementary forces like lakes, rivers, elemental entities, to mountains and trees and rivers, to enter with their soul into your soul. And this you can only await. You can only open yourself. You cannot force it. That's why so many people are frustrated if they, plan the holiday and everything, and they buy and they go and they come, and then they suddenly feel, well, where is the holiday? It's all the same. Again, a house and a bed and television screen, and then we have 8 o'clock is dinner, and tomorrow is a program, and where is the holiday? It's because they have organized it, everything, and it was taken over by the organizers of the holiday, and they naturally want to make profit, so everything must be like, working on schedule. It's frustrating to see that inside of the most beautiful nature, people are running like idiots on bicycles, on boats, on skis, and looking at their watches and being controlled and processed through the machinery of holiday making. I was fortunate to work as a physiotherapist in 5-star hotels in Austrian or Swiss Alps and German Alps, several winter seasons, and I was happy that I didn't have to go anywhere. I was simply working, and I had the mountains in front of my working place, and I would take time to walk every day, and if this was beautiful, and I was lucky to work half time, so I had every day such like 5 hours of mountain time without a plan. Sometimes skiing, sometimes walking, sometimes exercising qigong, and no transport. It's very important, no transport. So it became continuous living in an mountainous area. Okay, so what is the meaning of all this? I'm circling around. Because the situation now, political situation in the world, and we have October, soon we have October 2022, after the COVID crisis, now the Ukrainian war crisis, now the economical crisis with the Russian gas, and the processes in the political realm, all look like the world is going crazy. After you have been lucky to live in the 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s even, in a wonderfully peaceful and slow world, and enjoy as a child, as a young boy, all these romantic moments where there was nothing happening. And you can go to your high school, and that the teachers would be clever or stupid, and in any case they all were just teachers, normal grown-up men and women who wanted to tell you something, and they were not crazy, and or they didn't have some funny ideas about what is this and that, or this gender, and that they didn't want to change your mind to some ideology. And sport was really, you have to do it, you cannot talk about it. The equipment was simple. I remember the time when there was only one type of bicycle in my hometown, Prague, for everybody. Either a small bicycle for children or a big bicycle for grown-ups. Finito. And the bicycle was a good quality, so you didn't have to spend your time worrying what kind of bicycle you are going to buy, or you want. You had the bicycle and you could bicycle. That was all. And then you compare it today, well, if you open the internet, you are totally overflooded by all kinds of millions of bicycles that you have to have, otherwise you are not happy. You should not be happy. And all the bicycles are surrounded by sexy girls who are smiling and and the teachers are crazy, and there is all the time some stupid messages about what happened there and there, and naturally you can escape into some living in the countryside on a biological farm and fuck all cities and just grow your tomatoes. But then if you look into YouTube, you find hundreds of experts on growing tomatoes in all kinds of biological cultures, and they are dressed nice, and they have a new haircut, and they talk loud and quick and show super pictures about how to do it. Okay, instead of, as I did it, to sit silently in the glass house or place where you grow tomatoes and lie down and take a guitar and play and smell and listen to the silent cracking of the growing processes, the several hours. So now I conclude with the idea that there's something very wrong either in the construction of this on this planet, or the biosphere, and that the destructive processes are much faster than the growing processes, and then something must be okay. If you live in a fairy tale, we are poets. We should inform the constructing department or the creating department of the galaxy that they have overlooked one detail while constructing this planet, that the destructive processes are much faster and easier to achieve than the growing processes. And this makes the experience for sensitive organisms rather frustrating here, that this should be remedied, and it should be done otherwise. Like it should be very difficult to throw a nice glass down from the table. Okay, it would somehow it would not like to fall. It would somehow stop, and it would stick to the table, and then it would be falling so slowly that people would have to ignore it, and intentionally looking away, and if it would fall down, it would not break, it would simply stay lying there, and you would have to be angry and crush it with your foot, and then a little piece would break away. Okay, this would be the other way around. On the other way, trees would be growing, like, you look out of the window. Morning, the apples were not there, and it were the buds, and suddenly the trees is full of apples. Every day new apples. So this is one possible remedy in case which would make violent acts of consciousness and violent acts of the body difficult. There could be no war like that. People would be thrashing their heads. It would start already in the Middle Ages. They would be thrashing their heads with hammers and swords, and there would be only little scratches, and they would be completely tired, and they would have to give up and go home because they could not hit seriously, destroy seriously anything. So I will, in my poetic world, I will send this message to the Central Committee of Creation, if they could change it somehow now, make it kind of reboot the earth, and if not possible, then actually we have to do it ourselves. We have to dive deeply into the software of the biosphere and see what we can do ourselves to change it. We already have this concept of morphogenetic fields, that the software of the matter is the soul. Okay, and the tendency of the software of the soul, or in very modern terms, to an informational quantum field. Now, if you don't like the old word soul, human soul, or the soul of the tree, or the soul of the woods, the ocean soul, you can call it informational quantum field. The tendency of these fields in our model is to embody in matter. Matter, these protons, neutrons, electrons that are combined into these atoms and build the raw material structure of the planet, are simply a locality, a list, a sum of localities, because this is organized naturally by space locations. This matter is somewhere, and it builds a kind of series, or the sum of localities into which the software or souls or the quantum informational fields can embody. And this is their tendency. They want, they don't want in our human sense. This is necessity. Maybe we shall offend the creating committee of the galaxy when we say we consider it as a kind of necessity, that these are no. This is the second variation. In the first variation, we have said if the world is created, then we apply for a reboot, for a renewal. There must be some corrections. Second solution: the world is not created, and everything what happens out of necessity. We can understand the necessities, but we must not suppose that there is somebody behind that who is commanding it. It happens by itself. And so we are fully entitled to interfere, to improve it. And how do you improve the software? Yeah, by reprogramming it, naturally. But we have already said the conceptual, cognitive software is the enemy of life. Out of it come all the machines and all the destructive weapons and bombs and processes in the realm of chemistry and physics that are disruptive for the natural flow of continuous growing processes. So we cannot simply think that we can go to MIT or to California freaks and start to work on it on computers and change the software of the biosphere. What they do, they are changing simply the construction hardware processes of the already homogenized matter with the help of science, which is again a cognitive discipline. The growing material, the mother earth, was excavated and processed and polished and chemically treated so that it will yield homogeneous materials. This does not matter. Materials are not matter. Matter was still living. Mama was still living. They have taken out of her body raw materials. No, we would better say raw matter. They have taken out of her body her parts and have processed it chemically and physically into materials, homogeneous, and out of that, then they construct artificial objects, cars, airplanes, robots, coffee pots, bicycles, whatever. And to do that, they use computer software. The computer software is comprised of abstract units, mathematical units, and it can represent only a dead world of those materials. It cannot adequately represent the living world because it is discontinuous. The numbers and signs and symbols of mathematics and geometry are discontinuous, abstract, and do not grow continuously in nature. They are invented by abstract human consciousness, by this ego beam, torchlight, which is falling always on one and then on the other, okay? And it can work only by addition. Think about the philosophical concept of unity. Unity. The number one, zum Beispiel, number two, number three, always the same unity. The first abstract unity is the number one. Number two are two unities put together abstractly, but they are absolutely the same. It's like cloning the 1 6,700 is 6,700 of the same units, and all of them are discontinuous. This can never represent a growing tree, or a blowing wind, a flowing water, burning fire. It can only represent a homogeneous material that has been purified and rarefied and worked upon, and it has it's the same molecular structure. As soon as you apply it on living processes, then you miss the spaces in between. You see, you miss that which is not separable into units. You miss the continuity, the dynamism of life, and you miss totally the soul, the real human soul, or animal soul, or plant soul, or according to the great philosopher Albert North Whitehead, everything has a soul. Everything has an informational, computational, quantum field, which is the software of matter. So if you want to change the software of living matter, so to improve the processes in the biosphere so that it does not yield so easily to destruction, we have to do it otherwise than with computers, otherwise than with mathematics. We have to do it logically with images and emotions. We have to do it in the bardic way. And it has been understood always by the bards that this is the only way to speak to the soul of life. So my suggestion is this, which has appeared to me, I repeat now, what has appeared to me in many individual sessions as I was, expressing my desperation and dissatisfaction with the current state of affairs in politics, economy, culture, and so on, medicine, that a sensitive poet cannot be happy, even though happiness is not only desire. It cannot be creative, basically. It can be authentic. It can be free if death and destruction is present somewhere on this planet. Because his morphogenetic field, the field of his soul, is so expandable that it feels any soul that is being destroyed by disrupting the body in which it is embodied, or which is tormented by some other soul, sends, or does not send, it simply expands in an informative way, and this can be felt by other sensitive souls. So see, this is the basis of the informational field communication, is that it expands very far in space and time. This makes it, in a certain similar but very, very dissimilar also to the spaceless time quality of abstract concepts. Abstract concepts are without space and without time. They exist only in the human soul by, let us say, reprogramming, by changing the way in which the human soul is naturally operating. Conceptual thinking does not have its own realm of energy. It is feeding like a parasite on the continuous processes of the soul, which is emotion, imaging, continuous perception, and so on. It is taking this energy out of all those natural processes of perception, imagination, feeling, and is sucking out the dynamic part and hollowing it and making it into a concept. And that the life force that is being sucked out is used to, which we do not know yet how, to making this dead geometrical, mathematical, conceptual structure. The defense is always what we call ecstasy, creative ecstasy. That is, you dissolve the source of power of abstract thinking, the abstracts of objective perception, of personal will to power, of consciousness, personal consciousness, egoistic consciousness, and personal egoistic self-consciousness. The source of all this is the ego. And ego itself is a scar, kind of hole, rebranding of a certain part of the morphogenetic field of the soul by attacking it from outside. This is not yet also decided in my concept of biocentric phenomenology of Ludwig Lagis. If I can agree with his concept of an attack from outside of this cosmos by a cosmic entity X, which is in its essence, a cosmic, spaceless and timeless, and causes only in the human soul field, causes this disruption, which becomes that what we call an ego, out of which could be, let us say, a stabilized, immobilized, a kind of frozen area of the informational field of the soul, and out of which then in successive waves the operational power of the ego is spreading into the field of the individual soul, of the human soul, because it takes a long time to establish itself after a child is hit. Every child is hit originally in its development by this force around the second year of age where the ego is born. Yeah? We have already hinted in some other lectures that the cause, while it can be executed only in the human soul on this planet, is because the human soul by itself, even in its natural form, in this natural functioning, is complex, is detailed, is sensitive, is the feelings that the human soul has are very differentiated, and the richness of the world that it can perceive is very large and delicate, and above all, it can expand far beyond the body, the physical body in which it is embodied, far much further than with the animals and with the plants. The plants are basically localized in one place. They do not move, even though their field is expandable to cosmos, even because they react to the position of the sun and the moon and the year cycle, cosmic cycle. But they have a kind of art, a group soul. No? They are not individuals. Animals are individuals because they move around on the surface of the planet. They perceive much more of the local surroundings, no? Than the plants, because they can be here and tomorrow they can be on the other side of the lake, and the day after that they can be on the top of the mountains, like you speak about the wolves, no? A wolf's pack, no? And they are individuals, but they always have the world they perceive, or the distance to which the soul of the individual wolf is expand, is limited. No? To who is smelling around and looking around and doesn't, so to say, much care what is on the other side of the lake if he does not smell it. And the smell is a molecule which hits his olfactory nerve, so it is not something which requires for the soul to expand to distance. No? Whereas a human being has a soul which expands far. It can expand in time, it can remember what was yesterday, it can imagine what it will do tomorrow, and it can remember where it was 20 years ago, completely different part of the planet. No? And that is why the human soul field is processing so much information, so many emotions, so many images, that the mirroring, naturally all organisms have an inside. The world is outside. We are inside. Nobody can doubt that. And we have to bring the outside into the inside by a process of mirroring or representing. And this is also the case with animals. And the animals are simply mirroring. Their instincts are guiding them. The world they see, it's an interesting chapter that the human race could spend a lot of centuries with to imagine and to make models. How do all other animals which share this planet with us, how do they actually perceive and feel the world? It should be much better to do this than to invent new banking processes and new warrior-like processes and new businesses. We will be closer to reality by that. We could learn from animals a lot of, life supporting activities and arts. A lot of feelings that could enrich our life. Who is not looking with love on a cat that is lying in the sun on the porch and is having simply a total satori, relaxed moment of enjoying the sunshine? Because there is no ego in the cat. Her soul field is completely melted into the sun field, because the sun has a huge soul. So I was diverting from the main line of this talk. Let's make a break.
I woke this morning, love laid me down by the river. Drifting, I turned on upstream, bound for my forgiver. In the giving of my eyes to see a face, sounded silence me, leaving no trace. I beg to leave to hear your wondrous stories. Beg to hear your wondrous stories. La la la. He spoke of lands not far, for lands they were in his mind. Of vision captured high, where reason captured his time. In no time at all, he took me to the gate. In haste, I quickly checked the time. If I was late, I had to leave to hear your wondrous stories. I had to hear your wondrous stories. La la. Hearing your wondrous stories. Hearing your wondrous stories.
I was diverted from the main line of this talk, which was to talk about what can we do to change the metaphysical software of the biosphere so that destruction would not be so easy, would not overpower creation. And I was diverted by explaining the functioning or the changes or the growing or the expanding and retracting, spreading of the morphogenetic field of the soul, which we have for modern purposes called the informational quantum field, which embodies into the matter of the body, which is the software of the body of all organisms. I was talking about its detailed functioning so that I would bring the idea of the ego, how the ego was created, okay, and so that I would then be reasonably arguing for processes that would dissolve the ego again, which is the prerequisite for reprogramming, recreating, rebuilding, reimagining, re-emotionalizing the software field of the biosphere. Oh, this is a great stuff. Now this is a great stuff. And cannot be done by sitting with in a computer on a screen and then now doing it step by step. Yeah. It is only by inspired vision that it can be revealed. No? To a passively listening bard, who is drawn away to great distances of time and space, whenever a strong image or an emotion embodies into his soul, or better to say, merges with his soul, because that what is inspiring him is again an information field, be it the informational field of the sun, of this huge ball of exploding energy, the dragon, the fire dragon. The fire dragon would be a kind of image that appears in the poet's soul when he opens to the morphogenetic of the soul of the sun, and it represents itself passively by appearing as a dragon, for example. All a beautiful soul priestess, a sun priestess, the priestess of the sun, a girl made of sun plasma, with shining surfaces. And then we can argue and we ask, is it only a passive constitution of an individual image in the bard caused by the merging of the informational field of the sun with his soul informational field? Or is it a kind of and religions have always tended to the other solution, that it is an ontological revelation that there are such beings? We doubt that. We doubt that. We are inclined to the idea that it could be the other way around, that the human soul could, by its essence of being a human, could offer to that huge ball of fire this informational field to then condense it into an elemental being made of fire, which would have the shape of the human being, which is the basis of magic, no? Elementary magic. Yeah? They call these beings elementals. And again, there is a slight difference. The Renaissance magic, which was concerned with this, and then later on, like there is one Czech master of this, Bohemian philosopher. What was his name? Bardon, František, called Franz because he was writing in German context. Franz Bardon, elementary magic, the gate of true initiation. But these Renaissance magicians and later magicians, which were in the tradition of patriarchal Christianity, basically, mystical Christianity, they always tended to commanding these creations, these elementals. And so it remained, I would say, in the realm of illusions. No? They deceived themselves. They like to have fairy tales, no? And they were satisfied with it. I think that in the real constitution, in the real exchange of morphogenetic fields between elementary conglomerates like sun, mountain, wind, river, ocean, lake, and an individual bard, there rules passivity. The only way of mixing informational field is when they are drawn to each other by their essences. And since the ego is essentially an enemy of the soul, because it is spaceless and timeless and discontinuous, it can have no influence on the field of the soul apart from disrupting it. So it cannot create, can only destroy. And this is the great predicament of the human race, that by wanting to change the elemental processes in nature and also in our own bodies, we per definitionem, at least in the metaphysics of biocentric phenomenology, we are doomed to destroy, because the instrument with which we want to create is the ego, because it's the instrument, it's the will to power, will to creation, is this beam of intentionally consciousness which can concentrate on the elements of the sun and create a kind of fiery being, an elemental. But it, in this case, as we have said, it would be an illusion. Yeah? It doesn't have any effect. It's madness to believe that there is something like that. But if we direct this intentional beam of consciousness on actual living organisms in our biosphere, and want to create something out of them, we must first separate them, which is very, very, very strong argument of Rupert Sheldrake, who is actually the great proponent of and defender of morphogenetic fields. His theory of morphogenesis is very strong also for me. And he says that it's absurd to study the laws of life, to discover the secrets of life by killing it. No? Because he, as a student of biology, was always shocked that he had to simply take samples from living organisms like plants and animals and then put them under microscope and watch how the cells do react with each other. Unfortunately, the whole organism out of which these samples were taken died in the process of understanding its life, no, its living. So you see, this is it. If we have to decompose it into individual and above all the smallest. Now this is the terrible heritage of empirism, of English empirism. John Locke and Francis Bacon. No? Francis Bacon for the natural processes, no? And and John Locke for the mental realm, for the mental. Is a terrible world. The mind, the world mind, is a terrible bastard, which is influenced English language psychology to such an extent that there's a complete confusion. It can mean anything. We have to return to the triad of antiquity, body, soul, and spirit. Modern terms, body, soul, and cognitive processes. So, these two guys, Francis Bacon and John Locke, have introduced the idea of corpuscularity, of the minimum units, minimum smallest units which comprise life of matter and of the soul. All the processes can be computed and built by putting small parts on one another. In the realm of the soul, it was then the primary ideas, the secondary ideas, the composed, and so. And in the realm of nature, it was the elements, the atoms, and so on. So, yeah, I hope you understand what I'm trying to point to. If you want really to return to a metaphysical reprogramming, recreating, reimagining of the living soul of this planet, then we must not do it in intentional consciousness. You must not do it in the realm of the ego, because it is always will destroy it. It will separate into abstract parts and will put these abstract parts into abstract mechanical processes and falsify by that the living reality. And this, as a result, is the destruction of everything. That's why we see today the paradox that all realms of human activity which are based on ego or superego, which is basically the collected ego into some ideology and collected masses of individual egos into some ideology, religion, scientific theory, and so on. And they destroy everything. Okay, this new kind of scientific, let us say, egoistic, super egoistic agriculture destroys the living world. The egoistic, super egoistic medicine destroys the life of human body and soul, and so on and so on. The super egoistic educational theory makes the children stupid. Okay, so you can take anything you want. The super egoistic theory of how to make a holiday and free time living makes the holiday makers the idiots who run from one relaxing and enjoyable project to another until you can see such post signs as like 200% relaxation. You can't get more. It is not perverse that you have to relax and then you might immediately run to another relaxation. Be on time, please. You are beyond schedule. You do not relax 100%. What's wrong with you? Okay. You see the absurdity of it all. We have great defenders of our approach and old Zen masters who have realized this long before. That's why Zen poetry is so close to our way of seeing. We have Krishnamurti, who directly demands thinking must stop. But what? Then what? No, when thinking stops, then life happens. Your body does not disappear if you stop thinking. Your soul does not stop emotions. No? Then you actually live in harmony with nature. So we have come to the conclusion that the ego must be dissolved, and then our imagination may reach the soul of the planet Earth if it will be strong enough, I mean deep enough and far enough. That's why we support it with music, no? And as I've started this lecture with the image of a war situation in which trees are destroyed and fire is burning and young boys are sent instead of into gardens where they walk in the soft evening breeze where birds are singing and the silence is huge and the deep feeling of young power is drawing them to those beautiful nymphs, and these girls are coming instead of your machine gun fire explosions and shouting commands of some lunatic old man that are actually haters of life. And this is a great, terrible idea that I have, that old people that have not found the way to the gardens of their soul, they are haters of life. This is the Nietzschean concept of resentment, no? And the Clarkisian concept of being excluded from life. Envy, life envy. Knowing that you are excluded and knowing that there is no return. Then you hate yourself and you hate life, and some of them are so perverted that they send young boys to wars. So here we have started with our disgust and with our poetic kind of ekel. Yeah? We can only use the word of Nietzsche, ekel, 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 dreifach ekel. That is disgust, thrice disgust. Abhorrence is one of the words that Nietzsche uses when he despises something utterly. I abhor this, because he smelled like no one else with his deepest realms of his soul. He smelled that what he called the decadence, which is dying life. And dying life is very jealous and very poisonous as far as blossoming and beautiful and young life is concerned. And this is where we start our imagination, our healing of the metaphysical field of planet Earth. So we have we send it, and we say, okay, if there are some creators, if there are some masters, if there are some gods, we hope that they will use it. No? If they're life, if they're creators of life. And if not, then we are, as part of this biosphere, we are close to it, we understand it, we are the sons and daughters of this planet, and we love our mother, and so we are going to push, and let us say we are going to invite, or even let us say, I don't know how the word, like it's the verführen, the German word verführen. We are going to seduce, I have the word. We are going to seduce in positive terms the planet to more life, to defend it. Because it can also feel, I mean, the soul of the planet is feeling that it's being destroyed by all these explosions and atomic warheads explosion and pumping chemical stuff into the depths and drilling and excavating and killing animals and putting poison into the rivers and lakes and even into air and so into a stratosphere. The earth is being poisoned, and she has a long way to feel it, because that 1,000 years is nothing. 200 years is just like 1 hour in the morning. The Gaia is waking up, and she feels some noises, smelly, idiotic stuff being pushed on her beautiful body. So she stands up, goes to the window, and then goes out into the garden and jumps into a cold lake, and removes all this dirty stuff. And then on some other distant galaxy, and some other, they will say, oh yeah, the planetary civilization on this planet 6678, now I hope they will not have numbers. They have a name for us, like the crazy. On the crazy, these worms, these intelligent beings have been destroyed. They were removed. The planet is healthy again. It's all core. It's finished. The disaster period is over, because the planet will remove us. And in real terms, it can be like, some explosion of deep volcanoes of such a force that all life will be destroyed, or snowball for another 15 million years, and once again, snowball Earth. And before this happens, bards are here calling to our mother that it can be done selectively, systematically, in the morphogenetic field way, not in the analytic mathematical way. So we say this, why not? If there is a soul field that is so much poisoned and perforated and raped, so to say, by this egoistic will to power, that it wants to destroy any form of life, directly or indirectly. Mother, this is what we see, what you could consider. Maybe it can be enhanced. this energy that is flowing, which is actually stealing the life energy of this individual organism, in which this intention occurs, this energy will be reflected by its individual soul field. No necessary influence from outside. The way the soul field grows will be supported by a little extra change, that in case the intention in which it is being changed would destroy some other organism, then immediately this energy is going to be reflected by the soul field, by the mirror of the soul. Let us say the mirror of the soul. We talk about the mirror of the soul in animals. They simply mirror the surroundings. They don't change it. And little children also, and poets that are wandering through the forests, and gardeners who love nature, and workers, handcraftsmen who work with the elements in a loving way. They simply mirror that which is offered to them. They don't change it too much. They change it only in shape. They make it more beautiful for them. So this mirror is mirroring this attacking energy. Actually, it is very congruent with what we have said at the beginning, that the personal will to power, the personal egoistic consciousness, and this personal egoistic objective perception, and this personal egoistic conceptual thinking, which is separating the continuity of living organisms into abstract units, material or ideal units. We have said that this activity does not have any source of power, its own source of power. It can only utilize the energy of the soul field, and it means also of the body, which is the home of the soul. That's why we see these people look, those who are bent on destroying life, and those envious characters, and kind of dyspeptic haters. They also look bodily like ruins, because they have burned all the energy of their soul and body in their cognitive, egoistic furnace of hate and envy. It does not change anything on this if they make some moral shields. We must be grateful to Nietzsche to discover that this great moral praise for politics and religion and personal lifestyle may be simply a shield which is covering the deep hate, envy, and stupidity, because they didn't discover this, what we are now discovering. Okay, so this is congruent. Our suggestion that the mirror of the soul can rebounds this destructive energy coming from the ego into the soul field, Because if somebody wants to kill another life form or give a command to do so by a telephone or devise a weapon which can do it or send money to support such an action, he simply has to do it like an individual organism. He has to command his soul and his body to do it. So this is what we shall stop suggesting to the makers of the galaxy or to the evolutionary forces or to Mother Gaia that this will be the small change in the metaphysics of the soul on this planet. That this narrow beam of destructive consciousness, intentional consciousness, to do something of that kind will be mirrored immediately back into the very core, into the eye of Sauron. We have a good image for that. Into the eye of Sauron, you see, in The Lord of the Rings, it's not a stupid book. In the mythology, there are hidden wisdoms, and there is imagery. But it is, it is made to, it is objectified, externalized. There are real monsters and there are real good guys and bad guys and dragons. But for a phenomenologist and for somebody who thinks in terms of Jungian and Campbell archetypes, this all is a projection of phenomenological processes inside the human soul and body. So, it is reflected back, this narrow beam of energy is reflected back into the eye of Sauron, that is into that locality inside the human soul in which the ego started to spread, and it will burn it out. Either one possibility,